I'm moving forward every day, Jesus. I just let him lead the way every second, every minute, every hour of the day. I'm moving with Jesus every day, 24/7. With Jesus every day, 24/7. I'm moving with Jesus. I'm moving with Jesus every day.
Some people compromise their health in order to become wealthy, and then they have to turn around and use all their wealth to get back healthy. Is that your story? Do you spend most of your life trying to live to eat, or do you eat to live? Well, in studio today is Pastor Joseph Mahadeo. He's also a medical doctor at that. And this is your first time?
It is, yes.
It's first time on JC 24/7. So you represent not only the medical fraternity, but the great physician.
That's correct, sir.
Good, good. Before
Yes.
we get into our discussion, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself. Did you always want to marry the two professions and becoming a medical missionary, so to speak?
Yes, well, from a very early age, in my early childhood, I felt God's strong call to me to be a medical missionary.
Okay.
And in the current context of where I live, I thought the best way to achieve that is to study both ministry and medicine.
Okay. How do you see the two of them working together, hand in hand?
Well, when we look at Jesus' ministry, we see that he did a lot of physical healing.
Right.
And we also know from reading the Bible that he gave a lot of spiritual instruction.
Right.
So he is the ideal model of a medical missionary. So to me, it's a very natural marriage.
Okay.
The ministry and the medicine.
Okay. So you are a true disciple of
I
Christ.
strive to be every day.
I'm still becoming.
Praise the Lord.
Our discussion today has to do with dietary habits as
Yes.
it relates, particularly, I suppose, to Trinidad and Tobago. And I suppose by extension, you can include some of the Caribbean islands.
Yes.
What is, from your perspective, what are some of the positives about dietary habits in Trinidad and Tobago?
Right. Well, Trinidadians and Tobagonians, generally because where we live, there's an abundance of fresh fruit,
Right.
albeit seasonal, some
Right.
of them. Most individuals with whom you speak tell you that they enjoy consuming a lot of fruit.
Oh, yes.
Well, we have mangoes around, we have bananas. So
Right.
whatever is around is generally well consumed. So that's one positive. Traditionally, more so in the past, we are people that enjoy a good home cooked meal,
I tell you.
right? So that has augured well for us more so in the past. And I've discovered from going outside, taking it for granted that in Trinidad and Tobago we enjoy plant-based protein sources.
Okay.
So in many meals you would find peas and beans,
Right.
lentils, that those foods in the legume category. Whereas on the outside sometimes that is not present.
Right.
You have
That's
a
true.
carbohydrate source and then you have some animal protein.
Right.
So a plant-based protein source in our meals is a good thing. And an extension of that is, again, I appreciated this from going outside. For those who choose to be vegetarians, we live in a fairly, I would say, vegetarian-friendly country.
Right.
Whereby if you desire to, obtain food outside of your home, it's
Right.
possible as a vegetarian.
Right.
Whereas
That's
in
true.
other places, it is a most difficult task, I
mercy.
tell you.
Have mercy. If I may indulge you for a little bit, what are some of your favorite fruits?
Some of my favorite fruits, I would say bananas, mangoes, particularly the starch and Julie varieties. Definitely. Yes, tropical fruits, pineapples,
Right.
so pears, some of the temperate climate fruits,
Right.
apples.
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up in Climate.
Climate, yes.
And Climate and sapodilla and stuff like that.
Oh.
Pomerac.
That's right.
We don't see many of these types of fruits regularly, but whenever I get a chance, these are some of the things I try to consume. What are the only downside, though, of the dietary habits of Trinidadians and Tobagonians?
Well, within the last, I would say, 25 years or so, unfortunately, we've moved out more and more away from home cooked meals, and we are buying into literally the fast food industry. And every year or 2 years, you look around and you notice there are more of those American restaurants, fast food restaurants, on our shores. And so persons are consuming more fast food, more food on the go,
Right.
there's less preparing and carrying of meals to work.
That's
And
right.
persons just are deciding to just buy it on the
What
outside.
could be so wrong with that, Pastor? I mean, it's food, not so?
Yes, it's food.
And they getting it fast.
And- well, that's right. But I've realized, and I mean, this is pretty indisputable, that persons who cook in a business, particularly large establishments,
Right.
they cook to satisfy taste. And they are far less concerned about
Right.
health.
I
It's
tell
a
you,
business.
I tell you.
So their main objective is to ensure that the food has what we call a feel-good taste in the mouth.
mercy, have
And what
mercy.
really contributes to that is a lot of fat and salt.
Right.
That gives the feel-good taste in the mouth.
Right, right.
So when you purchase fast food, it's often very high in fat, much more than is recommended. Added to which it's fried many times,
Right.
which again doubles or sometimes triples the fat content.
Right.
And you end up consuming a lot of fat, a lot of salt, and when you buy the beverages,
Right.
you end up consuming way more sugar than you need as well
I hear you.
for your daily requirements. So it's food,
Right.
but it's what quality of food you're
Right.
getting.
Forgive me, I just felt a word coming on because a lot of people go to church for fast food as well to satisfy their taste
Yes.
and not satisfy their health.
Have mercy.
How did that come to be? Because as you rightly said, I mean, there are a lot of fast food outlets. I mean, I'm not that old, but I remember growing up, we got fast food. It was like a luxury. You got
That's
it
right,
once
yes.
every 3 months, if you're so lucky. But now it's right there at your disposal. Could that be one of the reasons why people are just deciding not to cook anymore, not to prepare anymore?
That's right. You know, it's so more available
Right.
than it was, say, 20, 25 years ago. There's a fast food place on every corner, it would seem. And so persons, even in the advertisements,
Right.
you see it's being advised, why cook? You know, I've seen it,
Right,
why cook
right.
when you could just order this or
tell
go
you.
in and get this.
I tell you.
So it's a matter of convenience
Right.
for some persons. I would hope not, but it's quite possible a matter of laziness in the case of others.
Or some people might just not be able to cook.
Oh,
Ever thought
yes.
about that?
Inability to cook.
Yeah. I will call no names. But what are some of the effects, though, of having to consume these foods that are high in fats and stuff like that?
Right. So, as I was saying, we've moved away from the traditional way of eating and
Right.
home cooked meals.
Right.
And these meals we often purchase, in addition to their high fat content, it's usually very low in fiber.
Okay.
And yes, and a lot of the protein is animal protein. Well, in many cases, I mean, if you choose to buy fast food as a vegetarian, it may be augmented a bit. But in many cases, there's a very high animal protein content.
Right.
It's very high in fat, particularly saturated fat, and very low in fiber.
And what's the purpose of fiber?
The purpose of fiber is, well, fiber serves different purposes. Most of the fiber we eat is not digestible.
Right.
So when you include it as part of your meals,
Right.
it really doesn't contribute to the amount of calories absorbed.
Right.
So it helps in weight control. Yes, because it fills you, but it doesn't contribute to your caloric intake, so to speak.
Right.
And it also aids, as many people do know, with a smooth movement
Right.
when you
Have
visit
mercy.
that special place in your
That
house.
throne.
That throne, when you sit the rain upon the throne, it
Right.
makes it easier.
Right.
And studies have also shown that it contributes to a lower risk of um, contracting or being diagnosed eventually with chronic non-communicable diseases
Okay,
like
okay.
diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease,
Okay.
and cancer. Having mentioned cancer, there's a direct correlation between the amount of fiber one consumes in his or her diet
Okay.
and the risk of cancer of the gastrointestinal tract.
Wow.
That is the digestive system,
Is
you know,
that
the
right?
colon and
Okay.
those parts of our anatomy. Yes, so it's important.
So people who are constipated, you perhaps would recommend first and foremost that they try to consume more fiber.
Yes, that's usually one of the recommendations in addition to adequate hydration.
Right. I
Because
suppose.
consuming a lot of fiber without hydration would not work out well for you. Let's put it that way.
You know, I say that because very often we and this is all due respect, we run to get medication, and sometimes the best medication is available to us right there, free of charge.
That's so true.
Just get the water and take more water, and all this, the rest is history.
Yes, that's what we would hope. Yes.
Good. Diabetes, and you said diabetes, hypertension, cancer. Has it been affecting more males and females, or is it general across the board?
Well, the studies would show that it's pretty much across the board. I mean, there are different risk factors, particularly when it relates to cardiovascular disease. Medical studies have shown that males are usually more at risk for developing such at an earlier age.
Right.
But we see in Trinidad and Tobago and in the Caribbean that both males and females are bearing the brunt of these chronic non-communicable diseases, diabetes, hypertension,
Right.
and cancer as well. Naturally, when it comes to cancer,
Right.
males and females will have sometimes different varieties.
Right. Okay.
But yes, I would say both males and females
So
are
all
being
people
affected.
have to mind what they eat
Correct.
in order to live well.
Definitely so.
I'm here with Pastor Dr. Joseph Mahadeo as we continue our discussion on whether we should eat to live or live to eat. Which one would you choose? He will give us the answer when we should return. Live to eat or eat to live? That's the subject of our discussion as we continue with Pastor Dr. Joseph Mahadeo. Pastor, I want to ask you relative to non-communicable diseases, right? Did I get it right? What's the relationship in Trinidad? How bad is it really in Trinidad?
Well, I was reading recently some information. The Ministry of Health, in conjunction with the Pan American Health Organization, did some research on this population in TNT within the last 5 years. And they were saying that at least 60%, 60%,
60%.
yes, of all causes of mortality or of death is directly related to chronic non-communicable diseases.
Pastor, I want you to say that a different way because I'm not sure if
So, in other words,
our audience is really hearing this. Go ahead.
yes, so in other words, diseases such as diabetes, heart disease, cardiovascular disease, hypertension, cancers are causing 6 out of every 10 deaths
Wow.
in Trinidad and Tobago.
Wow. Wow. That's
Yes,
alarming.
way surpassing deaths by violence and road traffic accidents and other causes.
And this has a lot to do with our diet.
It does, certainly. Another startling revelation in that study was that really personally startled me
Right.
was that among the persons that were surveyed, approximately 9 out of every 10 persons were not getting the daily recommended amount of fruit and vegetables in their diet.
Okay.
I thought that was alarming because of the availability.
That does not include Trinidadians and Tobagonians.
Yeah, well, it was strictly about Trinidadians.
But you
and
said
Tobagonians.
earlier that we are exposed to fruits and vegetables all over
We
the country.
certainly are, but apparently we are not utilizing it enough.
And in a sense, these are fast foods, you know. I
Well,
mean,
yes.
you get it fast, you can consume it fast,
Fast, that's
but
right.
we go to other outlets.
That's right.
All right.
Yes.
The whole question of diet and fiber, that took, had me interested in terms of fiber and its impact upon the human body.
Right. And one of the ways we can get fiber in our diet is certainly by consuming a healthy breakfast.
Okay.
In fact, it's recommended that your breakfast be high in fiber.
Wow.
But the whole question of breakfast, again, because we have been imitating Western culture and the fast-paced society, we find many persons choosing to skip breakfast or, have something extremely light,
And
a
you don't
cup of
advise
tea or coffee. No. So it's not only me, the research does not support that type of behavior. In fact, we have grown up hearing the saying, eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and supper like a pauper. That is a very true statement,
Okay.
a good mantra,
Right.
because it is being advised at least 1/3 to 1/2 of your daily required calories should come from your breakfast.
Why is breakfast so important as
Well-
opposed to maybe lunch and supper?
Well, breakfast is important because you depend on breakfast to jumpstart your metabolism.
Right.
In other words, to let your body know clearly that the day has begun.
Right.
I am about to exert energy. I'm about to perform certain
Right.
rigorous tasks, whether they be mental or physical or both. And it gives a clear signal to the body.
Right.
Of course, it also provides the fuel.
Right.
No one in his or her right mind, I would think, Pastor, would, see their vehicle on E in the morning and say, well, it's time to go to work without filling up, So it provides the fuel to jumpstart your day.
Well, quite a number of persons I've met are perhaps out of their mind because a lot of them I have known, or I do know, do not really consider breakfast. Not that they don't think it's important. They say that they don't have a desire to consume breakfast. What advice would you give such a person?
Well, yes, we have met such, and in quite a few instances, that is usually because of their eating habits.
Okay.
Sometimes they eat late at night,
there you go.
and the stomach is an organ that needs rest as well.
Right.
So when you eat late at night, oftentimes you don't have sufficient time to digest that
Right.
food, and you go to bed, and the stomach is tired. And so
Right.
when you awake, you don't feel hungry.
Right.
and so you decide to skip
So
breakfast.
you don't even advise eating late as well.
No, that's ill advised because the calories you consume at that time, you're not able to expend it.
Right.
And so what happens is the body converts it simply into fat.
Right.
It's storage mechanism for storing energy.
Right.
And it shows.
Right.
I put it that way. It shows when you stand in front of the mirror. Yes.
You're not looking at me, are you?
No, sir. No, definitely.
But it also affects your heart, I suppose, because your heart has to work overnight to keep to try to digest.
Right. So no, many parts of you don't get the sufficient rest. Your stomach is working. Your brain still has to be more alert than it ought to be, and that's why some persons dream strange dreams. and yes, your heart will have to be pumping the blood to the digestive system
Right.
for absorption of that food.
What would be a good cutoff point there for at night? Like after such and such a time, you should not be eating anything too heavy.
Well, I generally advise persons not to eat any heavy meals after sunset.
After sunset.
Yes, so if you want to use 6 as a mark, as an average time, yes, unless you plan to be up and exerting yourself physically during hours thereafter.
Pastor, that's tough, you know. That's tough you're talking about. After sunset, you said, you know.
Yes, sir.
I mean, when you plan to date your wife, to be, and she wants to go out for dinner, what do you tell her? After sunset, I can't go out?
Well, it would come down to making judicious choices in what is consumed at that time.
I hear you. But I guess the practice should not be to have anything heavy. And some people may even advise fruits, if you must consume something, it must be light, something that
It
is
should be
easily
light.
digestible.
Right. That's what because as you said, sometimes it's impractical to say nothing at all.
Right.
So something light or with as little carbohydrate content as
Right.
possible.
Good. What are some of the good foods we can eat, generally speaking, or the categories of food that you may consider to be healthy food that we would want to consume?
That's an excellent question. In recent times, even traditional doctors or those who would have studied conventional medicine are giving lifestyle counsel to their patients that they should have diets that are more have a lot a percentage of calories from plant sources
Right.
as opposed to animal sources. It's a balance, a scale kind of thing, if you will. And you want the plant calories from plant sources to be outweighing those from animal sources.
Right.
Another important term that has been becoming very popular in recent times is that of whole foods.
Oh, okay. What's whole food and why is it called whole foods?
Well, whole foods, it's called that, it's termed that way because the foods are in as close to their natural state as possible. So they have not been tampered with by means of processing or refining. So
Okay.
they are very close to their natural state in
Okay.
which they were harvested.
I hear you. Oh, okay.
So some examples of that would be, you have different categories in terms of fruit and vegetables. That would be the ones that would come most readily to mind. So you have fruits and vegetables in their fresh state.
Right.
That would be great whole food choices. And sometimes because of seasons, another option would be frozen.
Right.
Right, fresh frozen fruit or vegetable. That's another option for whole foods in the
Right.
fruit and vegetable category.
Right.
So what will not be considered would be pickled or preserved stuff,
Oh, okay.
or when it's tampered with.
Okay.
Another category would be legumes,
Right.
whole foods. So we have peas and beans, lentils, chana. We have the variety of peas and beans we find on our supermarket shelves in Trinidad and Tobago. So you take that in its dried natural state
Right.
and you prepare it healthily, and
Right.
that is an excellent whole food source
Okay.
of plant protein.
Okay.
And you have two other categories, namely unrefined grains.
Right.
Unfortunately, most of the grains we consume, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but in the Western world, it's refined.
Okay.
So we have a lot of white flour products.
Right.
But unrefined grains deals with grains, again, that is as close as possible to its natural state.
Okay.
So you have oats that are not processed, other grains, rye, barley, millet,
Right.
and more popular things, brown rice or red rice, as opposed to the white rice,
Okay.
would be better
Red
choices.
rice?
Red rice,
Okay,
yes,
okay.
I've had it. It's good.
That's good. Okay,
It's
good. You're prepared it too?
Well, not as yet, but that's coming soon. Coming soon.
What about this question of fats? I've seen on some labels, on some products, food items, fats, unsaturated fats and saturated fats. What's the difference, really?
Right. Just as I'm coming to that, let me just round up with the last category, which is whole food fats.
Excuse me.
Whole food fats are those fats that, of the healthier, it would be a healthier choice. So some examples of that would be nuts, seeds,
right.
olives, avocados,
Right.
and coconuts, whole food fats.
Okay.
Now, the whole question of saturated versus
But I
unsaturated.
always thought fats was a negative term. That's why I asked that question.
Right. So the body actually does need fat
Okay.
to some degree, but not a lot of it.
Okay.
Because fat of all the different food groups, fat is most calorically dense. That means you take 1 teaspoon or tablespoon of oil, there are many more calories than a teaspoon of peas
Right.
or of some rice or fruit or vegetable. A lot more calories, but it's important. However, if you choose whole food fats, you would have a higher percentage of unsaturated, whether it's mono or polyunsaturated fat.
Okay. Pastor, I want to let you go, but I could only let you go if you promise to return.
I do, sir.
Now, the good thing about you as our guest, you combine both the medical and the ministerial fraternity. There's some people who are looking at you and saying, Pastor, we're going to die just now. After all this healthy living, we are still all going to the same place. Why should I eat to live and not just live to eat?
Well, one reason would be for the quality of life you would experience
Right.
if you live on.
Right.
Because whereas modern medicine could add some years to your life through medication, it is by your lifestyle choices that you will enjoy a good quality of life.
Right. I hear
So
you.
that is one reason. And certainly, if you subscribe to the views of the Bible, you would appreciate that this body is the temple of God.
Have mercy.
And therefore, you would want to treat it with the regard it deserves.
I feel a word coming on. And maybe I could answer the question by saying, if you had not eaten to live, you would not have been on JC 24/7.
That's correct. Indeed.
So I thank you for taking the time to be with us. I hope you will continue to eat to live so that you can live again to be with us again.
Yes, sir. And my final statement would be a proper mantra to have is let your food be your medicine and your medicine be your food.
Mercy, I could not have said it better. The doc and the pastor combined together to share words of inspiration. Know that your body, my body, our body is the temple of God. Don't just live to eat well. Eat to live well with JC 24/7. See you next time.
Thank you for viewing JC 24/7. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and remember to inspire your living as you prepare for heaven. You can get it all on JC 24/7.